Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining us. Excited to be chatting with you today and having you on the Pond Advisory Board. I'd love for you to start off just by introducing yourself.
Yeah, my name's Jason Shim, and I'm a nonprofit technologist. So I like to help organizations effectively use technology to meet their missions.
Amazing. And I know that's kind of your job. I'm sure it's a big part of your life, but I'd love to dig in a little bit deeper on what are some of the other layers of your identity that are most important to you.
Yeah, so I'll start by sharing that my family immigrated to Canada, and that's important to me for a few reasons in terms of how I describe my identity as a Chinese Canadian, and I saw how difficult it was at times to navigate a country in which English wasn't their first language and growing up in that context, besides all the other challenges that accompany navigating bureaucracies that are already difficult to understand, even for those for whom English is their first language. I think growing up in that context really informed the importance of helping others, and really instilled a sense of wanting to help others uh, navigate these kinds of challenges and beyond. Another layer that I'll share as well is that my father is an electrician. So I grew up in the context of lots of wires and screwdrivers and electronics around the house, and it was very commonplace to just take stuff apart and try and understand how it worked, and what might be a better way of making stuff function or improve. And so I think that's really carried on in terms of how I like to approach just interacting with the world, and in terms of trying to figure out how can we examine, deconstruct, reassemble on a continuous basis for just making things better for everyone.
Yeah, and having such a depth of knowledge around technology and systems and data, I'm sure you could have a lot of different jobs. What was it that, why did you decide you really wanted to dedicate that skill set to the impact and nonprofit space? And I guess, like, how did that love story kind of start, where you started down that road?
Yeah, so my first real job out of university was at kind of working at as a community manager in a global governance think tank, and there was an opportunity to attend a conference in 2008, and that was the Nonprofit Technology Conference, or NTC, which is hosted by N10. And I was already drawn to the idea of working for the social impact sector. I went in. To university kind of with this broad idea that's like, I want to help the world some way, somehow, and kind of translating that into day-to-day kind of actions. And to your question of where did that kind of start, I trace it back there because it was at NTC I was really introduced to such an amazing and vibrant and dynamic community of others who were really working at the intersection of social impact and technology, and something just kind of came alive because it was all the ways to find ways to amplify your impact in a community around folks that were doing it. And I just enjoyed it so much, and learning about from others how folks were doing their work, how it's impacting other folks around the world, and that's where I would point to in terms of an origination point, and really it's continued to serve and weave its way through my professional career with social impact and technology.
And you ultimately ended up serving on chairing the board for N10, right?
Yeah, that was something that when if someone told me way back when, beginning my career, that would have been a possible future, like I'm not sure I would have believed it. And then I think as time went on, just really seeing the kind of impact that that N10 has, and just feeling really inspired, and the work that it's that everyone does. Yeah, it was a joy being able to serve on the board.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I also think N10 and just other work you've done, it sits at that intersection of technology and impact, and sort of nonprofit worlds meeting the for-profit world.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting more on the nonprofit side, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you find people have about nonprofit work?
Yeah, I would say one that seems to come along, or seem that I seem to hear, you know, more frequently, is that there seems to be a a misconception that it's simple or lacking complexity. And over the years that I've observed that, sometimes, the I think the surprise reactions, when I detail, the level of infrastructure or technology that is being used to try and address some of these like really complex problems, and really going along that, that complex problems require complex solutions. And that I sense that, when I think about where might this be coming from, I think that, sometimes there's an assumption that nonprofit work, or social impact, it lacks sophistication, and
Mm.
but I find that, it's very much a misconception that it can be just as sophisticated, if not more so, as any other type of work, and it's, when trying to solve some of the world's most intractable problems, like it does demand that level of sometimes complexity, and building integrations and infrastructure, and other things.
Yeah. The number of times I've had people ask, like, what is nonprofit technology? Why do they need technology? And you're like, well,
Yeah,
I don't know where to engage with you on that question.
yeah,
So it makes a lot of sense. And I think with that, given you're solving often more complex or more human problems than even just trying to sell more sweaters or whatever the for-profit business is, what are some lessons that you've observed successful nonprofit organizations exhibit or learn that you wish more businesses, more for-profit organizations would adopt, or practices that they should adhere to?
yeah. I think that a sense of mission can be really, really powerful. And I'm not saying that, the business world lacks it, or that, nonprofits, have the monopoly on this. But in my experience, like it feels, that it's much more pronounced within a nonprofit environment, and that the understanding is that, we're everyone who is part of that organization, we're here to collectively address, some of the world's most pressing problems, whatever it may be, whether, poverty alleviation or education, or, whatever it is. And I think that, it's in terms of, what can be drawn from this, in terms of the I guess business world, is that, I think that there are some businesses that do embrace that and have a very clear sense of mission, but it's something that I think, permeates the nonprofit sector, much more, in terms of, just the sheer, passion and sense of mission, and direction for, the raison d'etre of, like, why are we here, why are we doing this, and
Yeah.
being able to point to that very directly. And that's a very inspirational, thing for a person to be working in that type of environment. And I think it helps provide a clear sense of, how does my work fit into the bigger picture, and really unifying all of that very neatly.
Yeah. And I think now more than ever, right, where you're seeing the great resignation and people just having so much more like
Mhm.
realization and agency around, like, my job is most of my life. Like, what am I doing not
Yeah,
doing something that I love? And there's a real upper hand in having that really clearly defined mission.
yeah, absolutely. Like I think definitely the, um, being able to, you know just day to day have a sense of the work, having a sense of accomplishment with the work that's being done. And there are those days when, the work can be, every job has the more mundane aspects of it, but at the end of it, being able to really reconcile that it's all rolling up into, like, yes, it's building a better future.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of better future, I'd like to think that that's definitely something we're doing here at Pond. And, Jason, you and I haven't known each other for a long time. I've known Amy, who connected us, for over a year and a half now. And I would just love to hear from you, why Pond? You've obviously got a lot on your plate, your recent father. I would love to hear, like, what made you want to jump at the chance to be more involved and more formally join our advisory board.
Yeah. Uh, I think Pond, first of all, like, I found very compelling because it addresses a very personal itch, as well. And so, like, it, uh, I found that, Pond addresses a challenge that I've encountered many times before personally, and, not only myself, but folks on my team. And it's really like in trying to find solutions that are needed in a time efficient and effective way, and connecting folks with nonprofits, with vendors, and having aligned incentives. So I think that, part of the motivation for joining Pond in this capacity is that, it's the model that's proposes is effective, it's different, and it, connecting folks with who are in need of solutions with those who can provide it. I mean, it sounds like, a simple, statement, but it's, as you're building it. It's a complex challenge to do it well. And I think after, checking it out, it's like, yeah, like this definitely scratches that itch and does it well. And so I think anyone who's had to navigate either, sourcing vendors or trying to, cold call prospects knows how challenging it can be. And I think, from where I stand and, what I see, that I welcome, the Pond, and the solutions that are going to be built out. So yeah, that was kind of my motivation for it, and just wanted to be a part of it, and supporting the development.
Well, we are super lucky to have you. You bring such a different perspective, and a whole different market, right? Where I think is important for us to recognize too, expansion opportunities in other parts of the world. And so we're just really excited to have you, and feel lucky to have you on board. It's just the beginning. We know we've got a lot of work to do. So really happy to have you on board.
Yeah, thanks for having me.